to my future son. When I was a kid, I was told that big boys don't cry. That instead of expressing my emotions that I should lie. Hide behind a mask to get by, conditioned to believe that I should be one of the tough guys and put on a tough disguise. It's not a surprise that innocence dies at the age of 10. Or maybe it's just that pop culture lies to us then, because we've got our eyes on a TV mesmerized by the men who reinforce patriarchy and hyper-masculine trends. I had friends get bullied for wearing pink, because in 4th grade, the color of your shirt could make you stink, and in 12th grade, you were a little girl if you didn't drink. It's sad to see the way society thinks. My son, being a man doesn't mean being aggressive. You want big biceps, but a big heart is so much more impressive. And honestly, some of these bodybuilders are a little excessive. And young kids wanting that makes me so sad. Because why would anyone want to be a balloon animal so bad? Do you do it for them? I hope that being better for you is part of the plan. But it's okay, son, I've been there, and I understand that growing up with the world against you isn't a simple task. Even Jim Carrey will tell you it's easy to get by wearing masks. Society and institutions make it so hard for kids growing up who don't know where to start. I see the consequences of families that split up and get torn apart, so I won't let my child give his mother a Father's Day card. We live in a world where rappers pay women to get naked in videos for more promo. The intent is tapping that girl while double tapping her photos. And sex makes a boy a man, but gets a girl labeled a hodo, and boys can't say they love each other unless it's followed by no homo. I want to teach my son. That if he argues with a woman, he doesn't have to raise his voice or raise his hand. To treat a woman like he would treat his daughter and learn respect as a man. To love his mother through old age and do whatever he can, but first, I need to ask myself, is that the man that I am? To lead by example. And as your father, I want to coach you and come to games if you play ball. To be in the crowd when you make it to the league and have it all. But if you'd rather do ballet and play dress up with dolls, I'll still remind you to hold your head high and walk tall. To love your identity, your heritage, and your skin. And when you find love and you let someone in, I hope you explore it and fight for it through thick and thin. To love them for what's on the outside, but more so for what's within. Because in this day and age, we get consumed by the tricks up the media's sleeves, misguided by the information we receive. Reality TV and the movies we see have become the basis for what we believe. Unfortunate that power is used to mislead and that the young can't always understand the things they perceive. So when you grow up and see this world firsthand, I pray that you change it for the better however you can, so that maybe one day your son will understand that love is the first step to being a man. Thank you. Thank you so much. You guys enjoyed that? All right. So my name is Wali Shah, and I do something called spoken word poetry. What you just heard was a spoken word poem. Who has never heard a spoken word before? Raise your hand, I want to see. A few people. Okay, first time. Nice. Spoken word poetry for me was always my way to express myself and to put myself out there. You know, every time I had something on my mind when I was going through something, I could just write a poem about it and it would feel better. And growing up in Mississauga, this is my community, so I'm very grateful to be here today. Anyone else from Mississauga? Yeah, okay, all right. A lot of you from Mississauga coming to support the hometown event, I like that. And growing up in Mississauga, this is my life. I went to school at a school not too far from here, Cawthron Park Secondary. I went to university at the University of Toronto at Mississauga. And this story starts at university. So I'm at U of T, Mississauga, and I spent 5 years there. My prison sentence was 5 years. I also paid $40,000 for it. And when I was in school in 4th year, I took a course called The Sociology of Masculinity, taught by a professor named Jane Baker. Professor Jane Baker, awesome teacher. And my first day of class, I'm walking in, and it's a class of 60 students. And as I open the door and I walk in, 57 of those 60 students are women. Sociology of masculinity, huh? So I'm thinking, oh man, I gotta walk out of this class. Let me take the sociology of femininity. But something told me to stay. So I sit down in the class and Professor Baker starts talking. And at the end of that class, I realized this is exactly where I needed to be. But not just myself, many other men needed to be in a class just like this. My ideas on masculinity were changing every single lecture. Ideas about patriarchy, androcentrism, domestic labor, the wage gap between men and women, all these things that I had no idea about. No one talked about these things. And that was the unfortunate part, because this was a conversation that really needed to happen. So here I am in class every single day learning about all these different things. And at the end of the class, for our final exam, I asked the professor if I could write a poem about my feelings. And the poem you just heard was what I wrote. But see, poetry, where it started, was with rap music. I love rap music. My favorite rapper when I was 12 years old was this guy named Soulja Boy. Probably the worst rapper to listen to. Soulja Boy had these like 5XL t-shirts and baggy jeans that went down to his ankles and stuff. And I thought that was the coolest thing. I wanted to be like that. I'd have these 5XL t-shirts too. I'd be leaving my house to go to school. My mom would be like, Wally, why are you wearing a dress to school today? But it was the best thing. I thought it was so cool. I was like, all right, Soulja Boy gets the girls. Soulja Boy's famous. Soulja Boy has money. If I do this, I'm gonna have a little bit of that too in some way. I can feel cool. I can feel popular. And this is the same exact narrative that is being replayed over and over and over in the minds of millions of young people, young boys. It's this idea of toxic masculinity. Now, what started as me freestyling in the hallways at my high school, at Cawthron Park Secondary School, people would be like, yo, Wally, I know you can rap. I'll give you a word. Yo, rap with it. I'll be like, all right, cool. They'll be like, rap with the word TED. I'll be like, yo, today I didn't want to get out of my bed, but I realized I had to give a presentation at TED. I didn't remember a word that I said. The carpet here is red. Yeah, you can applaud that. That was good. And what started as this innocent little freestyling thing, listening to Soulja Boy being a young kid, it transcended everything that I could have imagined. And where it took me was this amazing place where I decided that I wanted to use my talents to give back to young boys and young people. Started speaking at schools, and eventually ended up making this my full-time career, where now I'm an artist. I'm an artist and an educator. I speak at schools all over North America, and I want to share a story with you. I was speaking at a high school in upstate New York last year, and I finished my presentation. I shared this exact poem with the students in the audience, and this young boy came running up to me. He was the first one up there. There's always a bunch of kids that want to ask questions, but he was the first one to come up to me and said, Wally, I love what you said. I could relate to every word that you were saying. I want to talk to you. I want to share my story with you. I was like, cool, man, what's your name? He's like, my name's Marcus, and I got to tell you, man, like, my father got killed when I was young. My brother's in jail right now. My uncle is the only male role model I have, and he's not even in my life all that often. And I could see how much he was hurt. Marcus was tearing up, and the only thing I wanted to do was give him a hug, and I did. This 14, 15-year-old kid going through all this. I hugged Marcus, and I said, I love you, man. And what he said next broke me. He said, Wally, that is the first time that another man has told me that they love me. And that is the problem. That we don't tell young boys that we love them. We tell young boys that the only emotion that they can share is anger or frustration, that they should beat something, they should punch a hole in the drywall before they cry, and that's the problem. Because there is so much more to the narrative about being a man. And my father, we came from Pakistan to Canada with nothing, and he had very strong cultural expectations for his children. Man of very few words, very, very few words. And I've seen my dad cry maybe twice in my whole life. But I realized through that I didn't want to raise my son that way. That I want to tell my son that if he wants to cry, he can cry all the time. Not all the time, but that I would support it. And that no matter what happens in my life, I want to be there for my child. But not just giving advice, not just saying what I think is right, but rather being an example. You can talk all you want. 8-year-olds don't need your advice, to be honest. But what they do need is to see your example. And so I want to close with a couple of lines of poetry. See, these kids feel lost and they just want to run. The byproduct of fathers who are not raising their sons. And they grow up without a father, and when they become one, the cycle repeats and his story is done. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So good to be back home in Mississauga. Thank you guys for coming. I appreciate you guys. Peace and love.